In the year 2025, global rainfall has been steadily decreasing, Earth's water resources are dwindling, and in the desperate search for water, humanity has turned its gaze to outer space. A strange liquid is discovered on the moon, but it's unlike ordinary water. Once it touches any living organism, it begins to multiply uncontrollably. In order to adapt humans to lunar water, scientists have carried out secret experiments at the Bohai base on the moon. However, a sudden disaster strikes, wiping out the entire research team and causing the experiment to fail. 5 years later, in an attempt to control water resources, the government establishes a water rationing system. The higher a person's rank, the more clean water they receive, causing dissatisfaction among the general population who demand equal distribution of water. Kim Jae-sun finds the former astrobiologist Dr. Song Jian, but she has now become an expert in animal behavior. Kim Jae-sun asks her to join a special mission, which she initially refuses, until he mentions the Bohai base. It turns out, Song Jian's sister was the chief scientist at the Bohai base and perished in the accident 5 years ago. Han Yoon-jae directed this task, and Song Jian was in charge of the work related to the samples. The team's objective is to retrieve samples left at the Bohai base before it is permanently shut down. Once they land on the moon, they have only 24 hours to complete the mission, as the samples must be transported under strict low-temperature conditions with no room for error. After the meeting, the team quickly heads to the launch site, but curiously, the co-pilot is replaced at the last minute. 5 minutes later, the rocket launches. Before long, the spaceship reaches the moon's orbit, but due to a meteor shower, the team loses contact with the space agency for 2 hours. As they await communications to be restored before landing, the ship suddenly starts shaking violently, destabilizing the landing module. With 20 minutes left until communication is restored, the engine of the landing module risks failure if the situation persists. In a critical moment, Han Yoon-jae decides to manually detach the landing module from the rocket. The module is left dangling precariously off a cliff. A crate suddenly falls, shattering the window, and Song Jian nearly falls out. Thankfully, Han Yoon-jae manages to save her in time. However, their satellite communication system is completely broken, cutting them off from the space agency. They are now on their own. The Bohai base is still 7 kilometers away, and it seems completing the mission within 24 hours will not be easy. Meanwhile, the landing module crashes to the bottom of the cliff. The team's only expert familiar with the base, Mr. Huang, breaks several ribs during the landing and dies shortly after due to breathing difficulties. Forced to leave him behind, the team presses on. With oxygen running low, they finally reach the Bohai base just in time. They immediately restore power to the life support system and switch the base's environment to Earth gravity. But just a few steps in, they stumble upon a mercenary's corpse. Strangely, the body is covered in slime-like bubbles, suggesting he drowned. But how could there be enough water to drown someone on a dried-up lunar base? Kim Jae-sun had mentioned before departure that there had been a radiation leak here, but everything now seems normal. Song Jian suggests dissecting the body to uncover the truth, but Han Yoon-jae insists they prioritize locating the samples. The team reaches the control room and powers up the base, but they're still unable to contact the space agency. Luckily, the environmental conditions inside the base are stable, so they no longer need to wear helmets. After the air purification system was activated, the environment inside the base became indistinguishable from Earth's, allowing everyone to finally breathe a sigh of relief. The blueprints of the base showed red zones that required level 1 clearance to access, but no further information was provided. It's possible that even previous base personnel didn't know what was inside these areas. What was even stranger was that the regions NASA labeled as contaminated were mostly within these level 1 restricted zones. Could this really just be a coincidence? Han Yoon-jae decided to split the team. If anyone found the sample capsules, they were to immediately check the temperature regulator. If the regulator showed a red light, under no circumstances should they flee. Instead, they were to contact Song Jian immediately. After questioning Gong Soo-chan, Song Jian learned that every base member had a chip implanted in their bodies. She planned to use the central control system to confirm the identities and locations of the corpses. It was clear she wanted to find her sister's body, but the system, due to disrepair, couldn't activate the chip identification function. The team immediately split up to search for the capsules. During the search, Song Jian discovered a strange passage. At the same time, she recalled something Huang had told her.
발해기지 데이터 스토리지예요.
Han Yun-jae and his team pried open a tightly sealed hatch, revealing the corpses of the base members behind it. The bodies showed signs of a violent struggle, as if they had tried to escape. However, the space agency's report claimed that everyone had died before the area was sealed, but judging by the scene, it appeared they had been trapped alive. Moreover, the signs of death indicated that they had all drowned, making the situation even more puzzling. Not long after, the two teams simultaneously opened the hatches to storage rooms 1 and 2. However, both storage rooms showed signs of having been searched, and they couldn't find intact capsules. Meanwhile, as Song Jian arrived at storage room 3, she unexpectedly detected the signal of an unknown life form. Could there still be someone alive in the base? At that moment, Lee Ji-su suddenly urged Song Jian to go to the control room and find a way to reactivate the chip identification function. Without thinking much, Song Jian immediately headed for the central control room. Meanwhile, Suchan, while searching for samples, accidentally stepped on a corpse, and some of the residual water molecules from the body got into his eyes. Soon after, Suchan began to feel dazed, and shortly after that, a strange stream of clear liquid started flowing from his ears. Song Jian sprinted all the way to the control room, but the hatch was sealed tight, with bloodstains visible in the cracks of the door. At that moment, a team member informed her that Lee Ji-su had mysteriously disappeared. What they didn't know was that this was all part of Lee Ji-su's plan. He had entered storage room 3 alone and accidentally dropped his flashlight under a table. As he bent down to retrieve it, the unknown life form moved the flashlight slightly. At the same time, Han Yun-jae detected the signal of the unknown life form, but the location was off. He instructed Song Jian to meet up with Lee Ji-su. Reluctantly, Song Jian headed back, while Lee Ji-su found an intact sample capsule in storage room 3. At this moment, Song Jian arrived, only to witness a horrifying scene. Lee Ji-su was suddenly attacked by an unknown creature and killed on the spot. After examining the body, Dr. Hong Jie-young discovered that multiple bones were broken. Based on the situation at the scene, even a fall from the ceiling wouldn't have caused this level of injury. With Song Jian acting on her own and Lee Ji-su's unexpected death, suspicion quickly fell on her. Han Yun-jae immediately checked Song Jian's recorder, which showed a shadowy figure taking the capsule from Lee Ji-su's hand. Deepening the mystery, they later found a vent behind a cabinet. It seemed that the creature had escaped through there, taking the capsule with it. This suggested that the entity had some form of value recognition, and it was very likely human. But why didn't it attack Song Jian? The unexpected deaths of their comrades caused the team to grow increasingly anxious. While Suchan sat quietly, his body still convulsing, the team sensed something was wrong.
진짜
After receiving the news, Han Yun-jae and his group rushed to the scene. Hong Jie-young told them to put on protective suits immediately and began emergency treatment on Suchan. But it was too late. Suchan's body had already been fully permeated by water, his internal organs destroyed, and even the blood drawn from him had turned into clear liquid. 3 team members had died in quick succession, leaving the rest of the crew at a loss. Han Yun-jae tried to calm his teammates while assigning them tasks. Hong Jie-young and Song Jian were tasked with performing an autopsy on the bodies to uncover the truth behind the deaths. Han Yun-jae, meanwhile, took a few team members to track down the unknown life form. They followed the ventilation ducts deeper into the base, where they found some strange symbols. However, the passage was soon blocked by a gate, which only a level 1 member could unlock. No one knew what was behind the gate, so they returned to the control room. Song Jian collected samples from the corpses of the base members and discovered that Suchan had died in the same manner as the others, but there were no signs of infection in his body. Where did all this water come from? At that moment, Hong Jie-young discovered that the liquid extracted from Suchan's body had separated into 2 components, but no one could identify what they were. An engineer conducted a full inspection of the base's system. It turned out the reason they hadn't been able to contact Earth was due to a malfunction in the communication tower's data processor. Someone would have to go outside the base to replace the device. However, the base's elevator had long been broken, and no one was willing to take the risk. Left with no other choice, Han Yun-jae volunteered. Before he left, Song Jian spoke to Han Yun-jae. She believed the creature didn't want to harm her and had attacked Lee Ji-su because he had encroached on its territory. She also speculated that the creature could move quickly through the ventilation ducts. Staying one step ahead of them, this suggested the creature was highly familiar with the base's layout, possibly a survivor from the base. After all, with the base's resources, someone could have survived here for 5 years. However, Han Yun-jae dismissed her theory and, along with 2 other teammates, made his way to the elevator. As he gazed at the dark abyss of the Bohai Rift, he thought of his daughter back on Earth. His daughter had been infected with the virus, and to recover, she needed to drink higher-grade water. This was why he had joined the mission, to successfully complete his task. Han Yun-jae had to descend 100 meters to the base's foundation using only a rope, but as he descended, the damaged elevator suddenly reactivated, speeding toward him. Fortunately, Han Yun-jae dodged the elevator in time. But shortly after, it broke loose and plummeted from above. In a life-or-death moment, Han Yun-jae leaped and swung from the rope, narrowly avoiding disaster but at the cost of using up a lot of oxygen. When he reached the communication station, his oxygen was critically low, and he had only a minute to return and replenish it. Despite his team's pleas, Han Yun-jae insisted on completing the repairs. In the end, he succeeded in his mission but passed out from lack of oxygen. Luckily, his teammates arrived in time and pulled Han Yun-jae back from the brink of death. However, even with the communication system restored, they still couldn't contact Earth. At that moment, they detected a signal coming from outside the base, and the signal's origin was none other than Storage Room 3, where Lee Ji-isu had died. The team quickly moved to investigate and found a communicator on Lee Ji-isu's body. It turned out he had been working for a mysterious organization, and the old model of the communicator was a product used by RX Corporation. Han Yun-jae immediately instructed the engineer to use the communicator to try to contact Director Choi. After multiple attempts, the communication finally connected. Han Yun-jae informed Director Choi about Lee Ji-isu's status as a spy, revealing that it was Director Choi who had authorized the last-minute change in co-pilot. Han Yun-jae suspected a connection between Director Choi and Lee Ji-isu, but the director firmly denied knowing about Lee Ji-isu's spy activities. Han Yun-jae then told Director Choi that the one attacking them might be a base survivor. Director Choi seemed shocked by the revelation of a spy, but her reaction to the idea of a survivor was oddly subdued, as though she had already known about it. Nevertheless, Director Choi swore that she had no knowledge of the base's current situation and didn't believe there could be any survivors. She repeatedly emphasized that preventing the sample from escaping was more important than bringing it back. To expedite their mission, Director Choi gave Han Yun-jae the Level 1 access code. Meanwhile, Song Ji-in had analyzed the virus's origin. She cut her hand, and when her blood came into contact with the sample, a strange phenomenon occurred. The sample began to multiply rapidly upon contact with fresh blood. This was the cause of Suchan's death until the host stopped breathing. The sample would continue to grow. Song Ji-in confronted Han Yun-jae in the control room, asking if he had known the truth about the sample from the beginning. Han Yun-jae had no choice but to tell the others the full story. They had discovered lunar water on the moon long ago. The government believed that bringing lunar water back to Earth could save humanity. The first person to discover lunar water had been Song Ji-in's sister, but the space agency had hidden the fact that lunar water could multiply indefinitely. This was the real reason for the catastrophe at the Bohai base 5 years ago. They needed to access the Level 1 database to obtain more information about lunar water. Sure enough, the database contained extensive information. At that moment, Han Yun-jae accidentally stepped on a small plant, revealing a hidden switch to a secret chamber. Inside, they found dense plant life. 5 years ago, Song Ji-in had received a cryptic email from her sister, hinting that she should search for Luna. Huang had also told her that Luna was the key to the Bohai base's database. Upon investigation, the team found not only a large plant area but also a sample storage room, with a shattered sample bottle on the floor. The power of lunar water was truly unimaginable. A single broken sample had sustained an entire field of plants. If they could bring the sample back to Earth and control its growth, they could save the planet from destruction. While collecting the samples, Han Yun-jae sensed something was wrong, as if someone was watching them. Suddenly, a young girl appeared, moving with incredible speed. She was lightning fast, and her teammate's arm was instantly ripped off. The lunar water sample was shattered, and the girl escaped. As the lunar water began to multiply rapidly, the team had no choice but to grab the samples and retreat. In the chaos, one teammate was killed, and another was severely injured and left unconscious. Using her knowledge of animal behavior, Song Ji-in deduced that the girl was protecting the lunar water. Han Yun-jae re-established communication with Director Choi. Upon seeing that the team had obtained the lunar water, Director Choi promised to send support immediately. However, she instructed them to protect the lunar water at all costs, even if it meant killing the girl. Han Yun-jae questioned whether the girl was a survivor.
Forget about who she is. It doesn't affect your mission.
After the communication ended, a photo of Director Choi and the girl appeared on her side of the screen, indicating a hidden truth. Han Yun-jae suggested splitting up to capture the girl, but Song Ji-in insisted on returning to the database to gather detailed information about the lunar water, believing it was the key to uncovering the truth. With no other option, Han Yun-jae agreed and sent Hong Ji-young to accompany her. When they reached the database, they found that all the information on lunar water had been deliberately erased. At the same time, the engineer revealed his true identity. He was also a spy working for RX Corporation. Besides retrieving the lunar water, his mission was to eliminate the entire crew. As he was about to take the sample, he was caught by Hong Ji-young and Song Ji-in. He lied, claiming that for safety reasons, he needed to take the lunar water sample to the control room. Song Ji-in sensed something was wrong because Han Yun-jae had not informed him about moving the lunar water, and anything related to the samples was supposed to be handled by her. Realizing he was about to be exposed, the engineer prepared to kill both of them, but just then, the little girl suddenly appeared outside the door. Han Yun-jae, receiving the news, quickly rushed over. Song Ji-in motioned for everyone to stay calm. She wanted to gain the girl's trust. She slowly placed the sample on the table, and the girl became surprisingly quiet. At that moment, Song Ji-in noticed that the name tag on the girl's clothing bore the name of her own sister. Just as the girl picked up the vial, the engineer shot it, shattering the sample. Oddly enough, when the girl touched the lunar water, she didn't mutate. Instead, it healed her injuries. Before anyone could react, the girl escaped at lightning speed. Since her body had adapted to the lunar water, it suggested she had unlocked its secrets, possibly the key to humanity's survival. Han Yun-jae then contacted Kim Jae-sun through a secure channel, hoping to learn more about Bohai Base, but Kim Jae-sun advised him to speak with Song Ji-in, as she had the answers he sought. Song Ji-in revealed to Han Yun-jae that she believed her sister had erased the lunar water data, possibly to prevent further casualties. Since the girl was interested in the lunar water, Han Yun-jae decided to use the sample to lure her in. Meanwhile, the engineer contacted RX Corporation, adding the little girl into the deal. Later, he secretly took the sample, but the injured teammate had already woken up and overheard the engineer's scheme. As the engineer left, the teammate was about to inform Han Yun-jae, but the engineer returned and killed him. Han Yun-jae and Song Ji-in successfully used the lunar water to capture the girl. Her foot was trapped under a gate, and Song Ji-in, unable to bear seeing her in pain, embraced the girl. At the same time, she noticed a Luna 073 mark on the girl's neck. Taking advantage of the moment, Han Yun-jae injected the girl with a sedative. Meanwhile, Hong Ji-young discovered that the lunar water sample had been stolen, and found a teammate's body in the cryogenic chamber. She immediately reported the situation to Han Yun-jae. The engineer, carrying the sample, made his way to the control room and sealed off all exits, plunging the base into chaos. At the same time, Luna overcame the sedative and escaped. Song Ji-in, trapped inside the gate, ignored Han Yun-jae's pleas and pursued Luna on her own. Before long, Song Ji-in followed Luna into a room that seemed to be her living quarters. From the window, Earth was visible in the distance. Inside, Song Ji-in found a trembling Luna hiding in a cabinet, and used her knowledge of animal behavior to gain the girl's trust. Song Ji-in also discovered that this had once been her sister's room, and a hard drive containing all the Lunar Water Project data was lying nearby. It turned out that 5 years ago, the research team initially tested the lunar water on animals, but under pressure from higher-ups, they began experimenting on clones. Luna was clone 073, the only one able to adapt to lunar water. In fact, Luna was a genetic clone of Song Ji-in's sister. Meanwhile, Han Yun-jae started suspecting that the engineer was behind their teammate's death, and decided to investigate while continuing to search for Song Ji-in and Luna. On the way back to the vacant room, Han Yun-jae encountered Hong Ji-young, and together they stumbled upon a warehouse filled with clone storage. The sight left them both in shock. Back in the control room, meanwhile, he returned to the main control room, where he was ambushed by the engineer, who shot him several times. He could only threaten the engineer with the sample, but the engineer, who had already gone berserk, shot him a few more times. The sample was broken, and the flowing moon water came into contact with him. Seeing this, The engineer immediately locked the door and locked him inside. Before long, a large amount of water spurted from his mouth. The engineer then opened the storage chamber for the lunar water, unleashing its unstoppable growth that was about to flood the entire base. At the same time, Han Yun-jae and Hong Jie-young returned to the control room, finding their fallen teammate. But there was no time to mourn. Han Yun-jae reopened the base's gate and instructed Hong Jie-young to wait in the lab, while he went to hunt down the engineer. Meanwhile, the engineer, now carrying the lunar water, searched for Luna, and at that moment, found Song Jian and the girl. Luna prepared to attack, but Song Jian shielded her. At the same time, Han Yun-jae informed them that the engineer was approaching and ordered them not to harm Luna. He instructed the three to immediately head to the lab to meet up with Hong Jie-young. When the engineer arrived, the three had already disappeared, and Han Yun-jae caught him off guard. After a fierce struggle, Han Yun-jae subdued the engineer. He demanded to know why the engineer was doing this, to which the engineer responded, "You have no idea what really happened here." At that moment, a message came through the communicator, causing Han Yun-jae to lose focus. The engineer seized the opportunity, and both men drew their guns, once again at a stalemate. But suddenly, lunar water seeped through the cracks in the ducts, forming a wall of water. The engineer fled in panic. The lunar water leaked through the ventilation system to the outside of the base, where the cold instantly froze it. As Song Jian fled, a drop of lunar water accidentally fell on her face. After reaching the lab, Song Jian revealed the truth about Bohai Base to the others. The base had been shut down to prevent information from leaking, avoiding international condemnation. Upon hearing this, Dr. Hong panicked, realizing that even if they made it back to Earth, they might be silenced. The reason Director Choi had chosen Song Jian was because her sister had been the lead scientist on the Lunar Water Project. To protect her sister's reputation, Song Jian would never reveal the truth, even if she discovered it. At that moment, Han Yun-jae returned to the lab, informing everyone that they needed to evacuate immediately, as a flood of lunar water was about to engulf the base. By then, Song Jian's body had begun to mutate, and her vision was fading. For the safety of her teammates, she quickly isolated herself. Moments later, she began violently vomiting water and gradually lost consciousness. But then, the scene shifted. Song Jian had survived. Luna had bitten her hand, and it was Luna's mutated genes that saved Song Jian's life. The group then contacted Kim Jae-sun, who informed them that the rescue ship had entered lunar orbit. However, there was also an unknown ship, likely sent by RX Corporation to retrieve the engineer. Song Jian asked Kim what would happen if they brought Luna back to Earth. Kim Jae-sun replied that Luna would be confined to a lab, forced to endure the same experiments as in Bohai Base. Song Jian believed this would be dangerous, potentially putting Earth at risk, and that Luna would spend her life as a research subject. She decided not to return to Earth and planned to take Luna to the International Space Research Lab, a neutral territory where neither Luna nor the lunar water would belong to any nation. But Han Yun-jae wanted to bring the lunar water back to Korea to save his daughter. As a father, he had no other choice. But just then, Luna heard that Yue Shui was heading towards them, so everyone had to quickly follow Luna to escape. But they soon encountered the engineer. Now infected by the lunar water, the engineer had become delirious and revealed the truth of what had happened 5 years ago. When the lunar water leak occurred at the base, he had been one of the mercenaries sent there, but they hadn't been sent to rescue anyone. They were there to eliminate witnesses. The government had never intended to save anyone. Seeing that the moon water was about to attack, he immediately took out his gun and fought with the engineer. Though he managed to take down the engineer, he was shot several times and didn't make it out of the base. Worse still, due to the system failure, someone had to stay behind to manually shut the gate, or no one would survive. In the end, Han Yun-jae chose to sacrifice himself.
대장님! 여기 있으면 안 돼요!
루나가 어디에 있든 송박사가 옆에 있어주세요.
To his daughter, he had been a worthy father. To his teammates, he had been a dedicated leader. In the final moments, Song Jian and Hong Jie-young escaped with Luna, but Luna removed her spacesuit. She walked barefoot on the surface of the moon, having adapted not only to the lunar water but also to the lunar environment. The Sea of Silence Season 1 ends here.